The Human Optimization Podcast is proudly brought to you by Vicon Supplements, where quality meets sustainability. Vicon's all-natural supplements are handcrafted and sustainably produced in Canada, bringing you products that nourish both your well-being and our planet. Visit viconsupplements.com today and be a part of a greener, healthier future.
Are you ready to embark on a journey to the best version of you? Join me, Lisa Pitel-Killah, as I dive deep into the world of hair tissue mineral analysis and functional medicine with fellow experts, and guide you on the path of unlocking your full potential. As a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, I'm on a mission to reach high-performance professionals from around the world to help you minimize tiring symptoms, maximize health, and gain unstoppable energy. This is the Human Optimization Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. And I am so excited about the conversation that is going to be had today. On the show, I have emmatekstra. So follow her on Substack. We're going to talk about that at the end. Buy her book. She is an amazing author. Now, let me give you a little bit more about her background, and then she's going to dive in and tell us how she got from point A to here. So she spent her 30-year career in employee benefits as an actuary, pension consultant, and global health thought leader with experience around the globe. She has a unique perspective on health and the healthcare industry itself, with published author now added to her list of achievements. Her first book, How to Be a Healthy Human, What Your Doctor Doesn't Know About Health and Longevity, is now available. And we'll touch on that again. And if you're watching, you can see that amazing book right behind Emma where she sits at the moment. So we're going to dive into some amazing topics, but we're going to start by learning a little more about Emma's journey.
Okay, well, yeah, so I'm in the business world. I'm a little bit corporate. I actually love the name of the show, Human Optimization. It's very businessy, constantly improving. So that really resonated with me. But yeah, so many people don't know what an actuary is. So maybe I should start there. So actuaries deal with risk. Lots of different kinds of risk. You'll find us in insurance companies, kind of boring, car insurance, life insurance, health insurance, the risk of getting sick. That's kind of the connection here. But we're really good with data and statistics. That's probably the takeaway. I'm originally from the UK. I moved to the US. You might kind of hear that little lilt in my voice.
Yeah.
I moved to the US actually in my late 20s, and I started working for one of the big three global insurance brokerage consulting kinds of firms. And for 25 years with them, my clients were some of the biggest companies in the world, all household names that you'd heard of. Yep. And so that was all going well. I became an executive in the firm there. But then about 15 years ago, part of my journey is my son, who's now 20 and doing awesome, was diagnosed with Asperger's and ADHD and had all sorts of health problems, chronic ear infections, stomach problems, you name it. And I've been super busy and just doing what all the doctors had told me to do. And they said, they gave me a really poor prognosis, wanted to put him on drugs. And I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute. And I actually ended up taking 2 months unpaid leave to just kind of figure out what was going on. And I started to research. And I'd actually wanted to be a neurosurgeon when I was a teenager. I wanted to go into medicine. My father taught me out of it. So I've kind of come full circle now. But I started doing all of this research, and I just totally opened up my eyes. And I went back. When I went back to work, he ended up getting completely healed all through natural therapies. We all stepped away from conventional healthcare altogether. I was really ill at the time. I had a 3-year-old son as well at the time, so we stepped away and we haven't used any conventional medical care at all. And then when I went back to work, I worked my way into a role that focused more on health and well-being. So I was still working with the same big companies, but very focused on healthcare around the world. And then in 2020. This little thing called a pandemic hits, and I'm a global healthcare consultant sitting in the middle of a pandemic. So I kind of had this front row seat, and I'm talking to doctors. We had doctors on staff in different countries, and I'm talking to different countries and different colleagues and how they're advising clients and what they're doing. And then I'm talking to colleagues in the US, and it got very rough for me. I can tell you, I won't go into the whole story there. I don't think it's necessarily pertinent, but to cut a very long story short, I wanted to speak out. And I felt I was not doing the good I thought I could do working for a big company, because I
Got it.
felt we weren't advising our clients and their employees what really was going to create health. And so in order to explain all the background, I'm like, this needs a whole book, and I can't do both. I can't have this busy executive position and write a book. So I stepped away. March 2023, I left the corporate world, and I spent the rest of the year writing the book. And the book isn't corporate. It's got an appendix to corporate sponsors. I mean, that is still the work that I do, and I want to kind of change things at the employer level, but it is written to the individual. So it starts, I'm all about the data. It's got over 300 scientific references, but it's
Wow.
very much written from a layman's perspective. It's got a lot of my own story in there. It's very personal to me, but I kind of spend the first half kind of laying the foundations. So, a little bit about the human body, how it all works together. It's one integrated system. A little bit on the history of the medical profession and the pharmaceutical industry, and kind of how we got to where we got to. A little bit on things like genes, how genes are only a really tiny bit of our health situation comes from our genes. A little bit toxins, got to cover all of that, all the toxic
Of course.
in our environment right now. And then a chapter on nutrition and real nutrition, how critical it is. That's the first half. And then the second half is really, I call it implications. And so I actually have a chapter on each of the key categories of ill health. So we touch on infectious disease. I ended up not talking too much about COVID anymore, because by then it was kind of been and done, and forget it. But talking about more broadly, so kind of take a step back, what is infectious disease? How does it affect the body? And what can we do about it? The body can heal itself. And then obviously chronic conditions, huge, 80% of healthcare these days is for chronic conditions. So autoimmune, 100 different autoimmune diseases, diabetes, cardiovascular, and the big C, cancer, touch on them. Whole chapter on mental health, because that's so affected. This brain between our ears is just another organ, right? And it's affected to our physical health. And then just I sort of wrap up with sort of healthy aging and longevity. So it is written to individuals. But yeah, that's how I got to where I'm at.
That's amazing. Amazing. And I mean, again, kind of breaking it all down, which is great to be able to just kind of take that all in, because I do feel like in this day and age, and I've definitely seen a shift probably in the past 10 years and again, I think the pandemic played a little part in that too, where people are just really looking for better ways to be more healthy. Right. So at the end of the day, if you can empower them, which sounds exactly what this is doing, giving them some workable information, but also some tools, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to dive a little bit down into some of the details. And one of the questions I have is there's validity in nutrition, natural supplements, right? You talked about alternative therapies and kind of going outside that Western medical box, right? And there's so many options now available, right? And, even kind of talking about your son and his progression and where he is now. And I'd really love to hear your opinion just on the efficacy and validity of some of those alternative therapies, and some of the ones maybe that you have really found to be a huge help with regards to someone who's trying to turn their health around, really.
Yeah. And, I don't know if it's a fear-based or it's just, so much marketing, but people get nervous that if they have a pain or they have something going on, that only somebody that's sat in a particular kind of a classroom and has a particular letters after the name, maybe an MD, then that's the only person that can help them. And I'm just, people don't realize there is scientific evidence for all of these other modalities. And I touch on all of them. And I in my life, I've mixed and matched. And that's what's so wonderful. You can mix and match and use what fits with your lifestyle and your culture and what you're comfortable with. So there's tons of science, but the problem why the loudest speakers are the conventional, because they have so much money. Conventional pharmaceutical companies are the most profitable companies in the world by many, many factors. There's trillions and trillions of dollars. And so they're putting that into marketing. And, I'd even use the word propaganda, if I can say that, but leading people to say, well, that's definitely the best. But if you look at the clinical trials and you say, well, you've got to have a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, Well, they are so expensive to run that it's really only the pharmaceutical industry, and then government has deep pockets, that has the means to pay for those kinds of trials. It doesn't
Right.
mean to say there isn't very valid data on lots of other kinds of modalities, on acupuncture, on nutrition, on
Mm.
even supplements and things. You've just got to go looking for it. On my website, I have a whole bunch of different resources you can go looking for it. But something really simple like berberine, the supplement berberine that you can buy over the counter, has actually been shown scientifically in a clinical trial to be more effective than metformin for managing blood sugar. So there are those kinds of very specific trials, but there's not as many of them, and not exactly, maybe what you're facing, the particular conditions that you're facing, and the particular combination, I would say, of, if we can say, alternative therapies, which really frustrates me. Let me just mention that, because
Yes.
I work globally, and so I work with all these different countries and all around the world, all different continents, and what we call alternative therapies in the US is really what 80% of the world uses every single day, because they can't afford all the pharmaceuticals. And so they're using all of these different modalities. We saw it very, very much in COVID. But what makes me super sad, and I'm British by background, and I'm living in the US now for I don't know, 26 years, I think. It makes me sad that other countries are looking to the US to say, hey, we want to, they've got the best healthcare in the world. We have the most expensive healthcare in the world. It's not necessarily the best.
Hmm.
But they're looking to say, hey, how can we, what other kinds of modalities should we use? Should we start introducing these different kinds of drugs? When all these other kinds of modalities, I mean, herbal medicine, is so powerful. Homeopathy, there's
Yeah.
actually a new movie coming out all about homeopathy and the efficacy behind homeopathy. So yeah, and things like essential oils, phenomenal.
Yep.
So there's so many different modalities, and there's plenty of evidence, scientific evidence. I've looked at the data, and they can actually show, and either they're comparing it to a pharmaceutical, let's say, or just showing that people have got healthy and changed their symptoms using these other modalities, which work in conjunction with the body, and not against the body. And I mentioned this in the book, actually, that people don't really know the low bar that a pharmaceutical company has to cross in order to sort of show a clinical trial, show benefit, and get something out into the market. They just have to show it addresses that symptom.
Mm.
So it addresses
Yeah.
that symptom. It doesn't have to address it better than anything else.
Mhm.
It just has to show it addresses that symptom, and that in the period that they're looking at, maybe a month or so, that it didn't create something really, really negative. But what it's not doing is showing all the side effects, the nutrient deficiencies, the processes in the brain or in the body that it's blocking,
Mhm.
the enzymes that it's stopping, the creation of proteins, all the different things that these chemicals are doing in the body. It doesn't have to show or even comment on any of that. It just shows that this particular pill addresses that symptom, and then it can get into market. Whereas anything that's a supplement, the bar is actually much higher with
Mhm.
supplements, because you have to show that it's actually doing what it says it's doing on the bottle, so it's addressing that, and that it's safe, and over years and years of use, it's not having a detrimental effect on the body.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you're right. Some of these trials are so short term too,
Right.
right? Like and what happens? We find out later about the long-term effects, right? How many times have we gone through this over the
Yeah.
decades that have
Oh,
passed, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And it's time and time again, and all of a sudden something gets quietly plucked from the
Yeah.
from the market,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. And
we figured out 5 years later that this
right.
happens.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's the big ones, like a Vioxx that was a painkiller. But what people don't realize is that ibuprofen and some of the other similar act in a similar way. And so everybody thinks that it's one for one. Well, Vioxx was just a bad apple. No, not really. Just that one. It was so blatant. And then the pharmaceutical maker just, kind of got sued because there were so many heart attacks they were actually able to tie to it. So a lot of the time it's too difficult to tie a negative effect to a particular pill that you're taking every day, because the
Right.
human body is so complex. There's so many other things going on.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons too, and this gets me to kind of my next it's a question, but I more of an opinion I'd love to hear, is that, again, you kind of said earlier about if there's something wrong, it's more of a fear like, oh my goodness, you know, if this person doesn't have a white lab jacket on and have an MD after their name, they're not going to know how to help me. But really, I mean, the human body is meant to flourish and be able to repair itself. It's so, I mean, it's the smartest system that I know, right?
Right.
And there are so many ways to be able to help that. And I think that people innately know a lot more than they think they do to be able to help themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, only you know your body. Even if you have a doctor that's going to spend more than 10 minutes with you, you know,
Hmm.
every other month, you know,
Yep.
and write down just the symptoms you could remember for the week, you are living with your body every single day. You
Yep.
know it. And you might say, oh, but, you know, I don't understand how the human body works. They had to go to school for years and years and years and years. The human body is so complicated. It is God designed. I mean, that I explain a little bit in the book. It is designed as one system.
Hmm.
And so if you took every doctor and scientist in the world and you brought them all together somehow in a room and got all their knowledge in their brain into some sort of database, that whole knowledge bank wouldn't have scratched the surface about how the human body works. So if you compare yourself to the guy in the white lab coat, like you said, and then compare to what actually is, there's such a gap with what actually is. So you actually know a lot more than you think because you're living with your body every day. And so, yeah, I explained a little bit. I mean, it's helpful to know what is the immune system, what's involved in the immune system.
Hmm.
So it's not just antibodies. It's not all about, well, I need antibodies against an infectious disease, which conventional medicine would make you think. There's all these other pieces. There's your spleen, there's your microbiome, which is absolutely
Hmm.
critical to your
Yep.
immune system. There's the tonsils. You know, I'm still hearing of kids having their tonsils removed. Even inflamed tonsils, they're doing their job. It's part of the immune system. They're alerting the rest of the immune system to get ramped up for a fight. Very,
Yep.
very important. There's your bone marrow and all the different kinds of white blood cells that are in your bone marrow. So yeah, you don't need to understand how all those different things work, but you just need the smallest little, inclination that it's a lot more complicated than just taking one pill that will affect one process, but it's going to unbalance all of these other processes. So, get more in tune with your body. I think that's what I advise people. And
Hmm.
nobody's going to know. I mean, you can talk to your best friend who tried ABC and it really helped whatever their condition was. That's great. Talk to your friends, but you've got to figure out what's going to work for you and just kind of be more aware of our bodies. I think we're all so busy running around. We just
Hmm.
don't stop to think, I'm feeling kind of sluggish this morning. What did I have for dinner last night?
Yep.
Or I didn't sleep well. How many cups of coffee did I have yesterday? How much water did I drink? So I think we also don't want to take responsibility to know that it's all in our hands, because you
Right.
don't want to say, oh, well, I should have done things differently for the last few months or years, and then maybe I wouldn't have this condition. Maybe people want to think that way.
Right. Yeah. And that's a very valid point, right? It's again, it comes back around to that fear, right? We don't want to be the ones that cause the problem, right? At the end of the day. But again, so many of these, I always come back to lifestyle choices, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned like nutrition, hydration, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because, come across and something simple, constipation. So it's almost like the new norm, right? And it's not healthy, right? We
Totally.
need to eliminate, get rid of toxins
Yeah,
and right?
absolutely.
And keep things cleaned out. And a lot of it just comes back to that rat race and stress
Yeah.
and right and the new norm.
Yeah.
And it's hard to navigate through that sometimes. And it's definitely an interesting thing too, because when people are seeking help, right,
Yeah.
for whatever their symptoms are, those basic lifestyle choices are always still at the base of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
How
think
much
people don't
water
want to
did I
think it's
drink?
that simple.
Yeah,
I've just got to drink more water and eat a few more vegetables, and I won't be
exactly.
constipated.
Yes, I know. And it can be that simple, right? Starting
Not
there
always,
is,
sometimes.
yeah, starting there is definitely a good place to begin. Um, but you also have a really vast background to look at things a little bit differently too. And so I want to dive into this just a little bit because there is, I would say, and I'll use a loose term, revolution in healthcare promised by the integrative medicine, functional medicine approaches, right? Those alternative therapies. And really kind of seeing how employers can even shift healthcare spending to be able
Yeah,
to help improve the outcomes of
yeah,
employees, right?
yeah,
more better productivity, right?
Absolutely.
All better focus,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, and this is what I'm particularly passionate about because I love what we're seeing at the government level. There's a lot of great conversations going on at that level, but governments move slowly, right? The power that employers have, you go to work every day, 80% of Americans, I think it is, certainly 80 million Americans get their healthcare through their employer. So their
Right.
employer has this really outsized influence of how you manage your health and how you seek treatment and what treatment you're going to seek. If the health plan is going to cover pharmaceuticals and conventional doctors, then a lot of people, they can't afford some of these other routes that you have to pay out of pocket. And so they're just going to do that, just financially speaking. That's all they can do. And again, they think, well, my employer's offering this, so this must be the best way because my employer wants me to be healthy, right? And I've seen employers that have wonderful wellness policies. They have gyms in the office, and they'll have counseling, and they have lots of great programs, yet they have this really, really expensive health plan that doesn't cover functional medicine or integrative medicine, doesn't subsidize your high quality supplements that you need to be taking because you're nutrient deficient, which is such a big part of many people's symptoms. It's just they're nutrient deficient. So I get frustrated a little bit that employers aren't doing more, and so that's what I'm trying to do now. And so if employers could give employees a little bit more choice with how they spend their healthcare dollars, so instead of the super expensive insurance plan, I mean, a typical insurance plan, people probably don't even know this, it costs about $25,000 a year for a typical employee. And you think, where is that money going? And it's going to a small number of very expensive, health people that are on these very expensive drugs for autoimmune conditions. The drug might be $30,000 a year. Somebody has a heart attack, that's $100,000 claim. So it's a small number of people having really, really serious conditions. But also, even people that start off with something that's not too problematic, but they go to the conventional doctor that's covered by their health plan. That doctor says, hey, take a pharmaceutical. You start taking the pharmaceutical, and then you got side effects from the pharmaceutical. So then you take another pharmaceutical, and it's building up and it's building up, and you're getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And you don't kind of wake up until your productivity is going down. And it would just be more cost effective for an employer if they would actually encourage you, well, go see a functional medicine doctor who's not going to put you on a pharmaceutical, who's going to do some advanced testing, like I know you're passionate about, and see what is going on in the body. Are there nutrient deficiencies? Are there, a buildup of the wrong kinds of minerals or metals in the body? What's going on? And then you reverse the condition, and then they're healthy again. And now they're not on any kind of supplement. Maybe you subsidize some high quality supplements. Maybe there's $50 or $100 a month of high quality supplements, but you're not paying $30,000 a year for the pharmaceuticals that you end up being on for the rest of your life. So I'd love to see employers changing it a little bit, and then even one level down. So employers can do a lot to help the employees, but you as an individual, my teaching, and I do a lot of teaching, is to teach you to be a better healthcare consumer. So to see healthcare for the industry it is, the profitable industry it is, any individual doctor, of course, they want the best for you. They want to see you healthy. They do. But if you look at the industry as a whole, they have bills to pay, and they have to be profitable, and they have shareholders to pay out. And so what can you do as an individual when you're looking at what's been recommended to you? Just be more discerning. Just do your research. Look at it. I mean, it starts with finding the best doctor. So, and I would say if you've got a conventional doctor that they spend 10 minutes with you and write a prescription, probably the wrong doctor. So get another opinion. They're just a human being who has gone to a certain kind of a medical school, learning a certain, getting a certain toolbox, which most of them, it's just pharmaceuticals, surgery, things like that. And then there's many other doctors who have, most of it is the same training. They understand fully how the human body works, but they also understand that plants and herbs can do amazing things in the body. I mean, to me, it was designed that way, that our human body was meant to interact with the rest of the natural world, and it can heal us. So, get the right doctor, get some advanced testing. Don't necessarily take the very basic testing that your regular doctor will say, oh, you take your triglycerides and your LDL is too high. That's incorrectly referred to as bad cholesterol. And oh, you need to be on a statin. Wrong, 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 wrong. Okay, there's plenty of research. Statin doesn't really help anybody. Your high cholesterol is needed. Your brain runs on cholesterol. Your hormones are made from cholesterol. You start reducing your LDL, you're going to run into all sorts of other problems. So do your research. And then treat, I use the analogy, if you're going to get some work done on your house, if you had a plumbing problem, you're going to research plumbers, right? You're going to figure out, what are you going to recommend? And then the plumbers, plumbers are expensive these days. So the plumber's going to say, I think you need A, B, C. You're going to do your research. You're not just going to hand a blank check to your plumber. You're going to say, well, is there any of it I could do myself? And maybe you might get, some input from a different kind of a plumber, right? But the stuff you can do yourself. And I would just say, when you're looking at healthcare, you've got something wrong with you, use that same mindset. Is there some things you could do yourself? Get a diagnosis. You do need to nip problems in the bud. You do need to go to some kind of doctor. Don't just ignore it. Okay, right. So you need to go to a doctor. But when you have an idea of what it is, usually it's not life-threatening. So it's not life-threatening. Then see, well, what can I address myself? Can I change what I'm eating? Do I need to move more? Sitting at a desk all day, like I am. Do I need to drink more? What other modalities are available? If somebody's recommending surgery, that's a big red flag. I talk about surgery is not routine. Surgery is never routine. Okay, the insult to your body, somebody cutting into it, and all the drugs and chemicals that you have to have before and after is a huge insult to your body. So you might say, what's going to happen if I wait a couple of months? And then they might say, oh, not too much, it might be okay. Okay, then take that couple of months to change some things and then see what happens. Yeah. So I talk a lot about being a better healthcare consumer, just thinking critically, looking at what things are telling you, getting other opinions, seeing what you could do yourself, spend your dollars wisely. So again, getting back, sorry, I'll just wrap up here, but getting back again to the employers, they might have a really rich health plan. Could you select the high deductible health plan? So you're paying as little as you can into conventional medical insurance, and then you're saving a little bit each month that you could then spend on some of these alternative modalities.
Exactly. Well, and I find too, and again, I'm not sure between, with the Canada versus US, just from a healthcare perspective, I do know that some of the plans now that I'm hearing about, which I really think is a great idea, they have what they call a healthcare spending account.
Yes. Exactly.
Right. So it's a top up. It starts off with a certain amount, and you're allowed to use it for different, whether it's diagnostic testing or supplements and things like that. So you can kind of decide what your fate is going to be for, your health and how to handle that and how to move forward. So I do see that more and more, which is great, because that's really getting kind of to the point you're making, right? That the employers really need to, if they really want to help someone, it's to give them choices.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Give them choices to be able to do that digging and due diligence that they need to do. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to talk about Canada a little bit. Even in Canada, if you don't have the account plans, there's still things you can do. Even with the national healthcare system, you can still look. You can save your money in other ways and look for other modalities. And I think there are doctors that will have a different opinion and have some different kind of more functional medicine training.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always options. It's just a matter of what you're dealing with and really what you're looking for. And again, I say it again, do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like this is something we just kind of throw into the wind rather than, digging in, and we're doing all this due diligence on all the other decisions we have to make. And then we're kind of bypassing the ones for ourselves, which is the most important. Right. And I want to kind of get you to share on this, and then we'll share some links. But why human flourishing is a better goal than simply good health. I want to hear all about that.
Well, I think health, the word health and good health, has been sort of hijacked a little bit. I think you'll be out having dinner with friends, and you'll be talking, I'm feeling pretty good, and then you find out they're taking 3 different medications, and they have to see a doctor once a month, and that's not health. So I kind of like to get away from the term. So towards the end of my book, I talk about human flourishing. Maybe the goal of good health is kind of has been degraded in some way. And so I talk about the goal should be human flourishing. And so human flourishing, to me, there's kind of 4 key elements. And it's a little bit my background with corporate wellness and corporate well-being. And corporate well-being, there's typically 4 different dimensions that your employer might talk about, but they're things like physical health, emotional health, social health, and then financial health and financial well-being. And I don't like that, because if you look at the healthiest people in the world, so I don't know if your listeners have ever looked into the blue zones. I don't know if you've ever talked about that on the show, but looking around the world, where the healthiest people living to over age 100, and they're not in old age homes at 100, they're riding horses and out on the farm at 100, and they die in their sleep peacefully after spending a really active day. And so those people, they don't have access to healthcare. They're some of the poorest people in the world, growing all their own food. So they're poor. So I don't like financial well-being. And so I take a step back, and I like the concept of holistic well-being, but I wanted to change it a little bit. So that's why I start talking about human flourishing. And so to me, human flourishing, definitely there's a physical aspect. So, how is your metabolism doing? How's your immune system? Are you getting coughs and colds every winter? What's going on? What is things like, do you have any nutrient deficiencies and things like that? So physical is obviously very, very, very key. And then your psychological or emotional ill health includes things like your temperament. Are you anxious? Are you confident? Are you resilient when something goes wrong? Because life is life. Do you have resilience to bounce back, or does the bad things in life really, really affect you? But things also like your daily attitude, your perceptions. I mean, there's lots of aspects to it. Your general outlook on life. And then the third one would be so your social health. So your relationships, your connections. Super, super important to your overall flourishing. You could be physically super, super healthy, but if you're isolated, we saw a lot of this during the pandemic, but if you're terribly isolated and you're inside, you're not mixing with people, and I don't mean on screens like this, I mean there's something that happens in the human body when you are physically in a room with somebody else. You're interacting, you're sharing your microbiomes, your the pheromones, or whatever it happens. There's something that's going on that we don't quite understand. So being in community, having 3 to 5 good friends that you can really talk to and have good respectful conversations with, and they don't have to have all of the same views as you. That's why I say respectful, but proactive and interesting conversations. And then the last one is spiritual health. So I'm very faith-based. I know, and I've seen all the evidence that God has created the human body, but I mean beyond this. I mean, just you have a purpose. You sort of know there's something bigger in this world than you as an individual. I feel like we're teaching the next generation that you're an individual and it's all about you and you be you and this kind of language, when we were built to be in community, like I said, but there's a bigger purpose. We were created for something. All of us are here, whether it's being a great mom, or a great teacher, or whatever it happens to be. We're all created for something. And so, and I think as humans, we need something to get up for in the morning, and to something that we focus on, and that creates, whether it's health or flourishing. So I think that's super important. You got to have a reason for being. And so I talk about, you need all 4 of these elements to be working well. And if you've got a symptom, a pain or a sluggishness or a tiredness, whatever it is, it might be something physical going on, but it might be something in one of these other areas. And so you need to really take a hard look at yourself, and fixing your physical health might actually start with fixing one of those other dimensions. Maybe you need to find a friend, maybe you need to join a hiking club, and it helps you. I talk about this at the end because the book has so much information. I didn't want to overwhelm people, and so I wanted to help people. Well, where do I start? I'm just overwhelmed by all of this information. I don't know what's going to work for me. I don't know where to start. And so I kind of use it to say, okay, I love the concept of an away day. I kind of say, get away to a mountain and kind of think through some things, get quiet and think in these terms of these dimensions. Where are you suffering? So are you isolated? Are you just working a dead-end job that you really hate, and you're just doing it to pay the bills? And that's kind of the spiritual part. And then the social part, as I say, maybe you need to be in community. So it's not necessarily the physical or the mental, like you've got a particular diagnosis, bipolar or depression or whatever happens to be. That's just a label. So I say, maybe pick something else to perhaps start with, and then that could kind of lead into other elements that you can really address. And so overall human flourishing, and it might take a while. You start with different things, but we're all on a journey.
Mhm.
I've heard you talk about this, and so it might take a while. There's no, quick pill for anything. Don't look for
That's
the quick
true.
pill.
Yep.
But I think if we start talking to each other about the concept of human flourishing, and we look at ourselves and we say, well, I'm not flourishing. I might not have a diagnosis today, but something frustrating me. And so just think of it this way. So when you're in those conversations with your friends, you're not just talking about, my health's pretty good, but are you thriving? Are you flourishing? So I try and
I
use
love
that.
it. I love it. No, I just think that because it's true, right? And I think what happens is, I did mention this when I was talking about constipation. It's a new norm, right?
Totally.
So it's like, so if I'm 100% and thriving,
Yeah.
and then something happens, you get used to it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a little bloated after dinner. That's
Yeah.
normal.
So's all my friends. So it must be fine.
So it must be fine.
Now,
That's
every female
okay.
over the age of 50, we're all bloated. We all have these issues. It's normal. It's not normal.
It's not normal. And this is the thing. I feel like as these little things kind of pile up and it becomes the new norm, and then we're no longer healthy. And it's not normal, right? And so I think the flourishing, it kind of goes right along optimizing your human, right? That's what I always talk about, because that's what we need to do if we want to be healthy and have longevity and be riding horseback at 100, right? Because it's true. It's true. When you look at those zones, it's all there, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, we could talk for another 4 hours on this topic, and there's so many things that you brought to the table that I really hope people resonate and understand, and then think about, and maybe they start asking questions to your employer about your plan and how you can support yourself better with some of these, again, alternative therapies or just other options to be able to help yourself flourish and have more focus and be more productive. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a benefit for everybody involved, right? So I mentioned Substack. So Emma does have a Substack, and I'll let you in on a little secret. She's writing another book. So
yeah, I had too much information for the first book. I wanted to, so the next one's called How to Raise a Healthy Human. So all about kids, taking this information for your kids.
Oh, that's amazing.
Starting with fertility, because fertility is just down the tubes right now. But yeah.
I know, it's such a, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But so her book that is already written and out, ready for you, is How to Be a Healthy Human, What Your Doctor Doesn't Know About Health and Longevity. So we'll have all the links on where you can purchase the book. We'll also have the links if you want to follow on Substack. And and that next book will be announced sometime soon. So we'll have to have you back to talk about that once it's ready for publication. So for those of you watching on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Give this episode a thumbs up. Make sure you follow my channel. There's a brand new episode every 2 weeks. For those of you listening on your favorite podcast host, make sure you follow our channel, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us today on the Human Optimization Podcast. Episode technical production is by Grace Sylvester and guest booking by Stu Tate. Want to learn more? Visit Pitel-Killah.com for incredible free resources to supercharge your journey to becoming the best version of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to the Human Optimization Podcast and follow me on social media at Pitel-Killah.